Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Discover Better Change Order Management in Construction Online. I'm Holly Gibson, VP of Growth here at Construction Online, and I'm joined by one of our Senior Success Managers, Carly Orlando.
Hi, everyone.
And we are excited that you've chosen to join us today. For anyone who is new to Construction Online is the leading construction management software currently serving about 950,000 pros just like you worldwide. And today we are excited to share with you how to manage change orders in construction online. So just to kind of give you a heads up of what we'll be talking about today, this session will cover how to build detailed itemized change orders that leave no room for dispute, how to create professional proposals and contracts directly from your change orders, how to do some reporting. We'll also talk about how to streamline the client review process and change order approvals to keep your work moving on schedule. And finally, one thing I'm really excited to share with you today is that we will talk about how to track and organize change orders using Construction Online's flexible new views. So we have some great new things to show you today as well. So as we look at getting started, though, we really want to cover the basics of change orders and just kind of review, what they are, who should be using them. So Carly, let's start with the basics. Let's talk a little bit about who uses or should be using change orders.
Yeah, Holly, and I'm really glad you bring this up. So, when we think about change orders, sometimes people fall into the trap of thinking that it's just the project manager's concern and the client's concern. But really, they're going to touch every stakeholder on a job, whether that's the owner or client, the general contractor. It's also going to affect your subs, vendors, suppliers, and designers. So, really, anyone involved in the job is going to be needing to utilize that change order and have access to it so they can get the necessary information to make sure there's no gaps in communication.
Fantastic. So this is really something that affects, everyone on this webinar, everyone involved in a job. When we look at what is a change order, kind of just in a very basic way, a change order would be defined as a formal record of any change to the original scope of work. So a lot of times I think when we think about change orders, it's like this, I don't know, a big complicated deal. But if we step back and kind of look at the basics, it is a record of any change to the scope of work. So a well-built change order is going to protect you legally, financially, operationally. It's designed to document what is changing, why it's changing, and then what those changes will do in terms of the cost, schedule, and quality of the job. So once it's approved, it becomes a legally binding addendum to your original contract.
Right, Holly. So when we're thinking about when change orders should be created, really anytime we're talking about any of those things, when it is changing the cost, schedule, or quality, you're going to want to put in a change order because that's going to protect you. So when a change order should be created, anytime the scope changes, cost, timeline shifts, even if the dollar amount is zero or there is no timeline shift, even if you're only using one of those things as a change, it is still good to document that. Now, common triggers for change orders are typically going to be client requests, unexpected site conditions, material substitutions, changes to timeline or budget. Real world examples that I have seen people in my success pipeline do are change orders for things like unexpected site conditions. Perhaps they started doing excavation and they found a pocket of loose soil they need to correct or something like that. Maybe they want to go ahead and adjust something for code enforcement. Those are examples where I usually see change orders being created as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think that's an important point to bring up because I think sometimes change orders, especially if they're not integrated as part of a day-to-day process or if they're only used like for major things, sometimes they can feel like, I don't know, almost like a negative thing. And it's really not negative. It's just more, okay, hey, there's something unexpected or something needs to change, which leads to our next point. When we were thinking about this webinar and helping people get started using change orders, Carly, one thing that you said to me is because I asked you, okay, Carly, what's the biggest mistake that you see people make with change orders? I'm thinking maybe they're entering something that, incorrectly, or maybe there's just like a little common mistake that we could help people with. And you said, no, the biggest mistake that I see people make is just not creating change orders. So common things I know that you shared with me that we hear is, maybe the changes is too small. So like I'm not really documenting everything because some changes are just too small, too much trouble. It would be too much trouble maybe to make a change order for a small change. Or another common thing that you're hearing is, hey, I have a good relationship with this client or this subcontractor. I don't really need to document every change. I think you called that the handshake fallacy, the
Yeah.
idea that like it's okay. We have a good relationship. We just need to kind of shake on it. And one thing that I added to that is I've actually spent, I don't know, probably an hour on the phone with someone one day who had really run a whole job that way and then was trying to go back and document a couple of dozen change orders at the end of the job just to be able to kind of get their payment requests lined up. So it's not just about do we trust the client, although you would protect yourself but better to go ahead and document things, but sometimes there's all sorts of other implication there. And another thing we hear is like, hey, it's just too formal. This type of job just really doesn't need change orders. And one message that we want you all to come away with today is one that we have tried to make creating change orders in Construction Online quick and easy for you, because really a best practice is going to be if the scope of the project is changing, you should go ahead and create a change order. Even if it's a quick one, even if it's a small change, go ahead and get that change order logged in the system. You'll be glad that you did. So I guess recapping, Carly, if we think about benefits that people get from using change orders, or really why they should use them, what are the big takeaways here?
Yeah, Holly. So, in kind of thinking about everything that we've discussed so far in the webinar, I loved your story about that budget adjustment. One thing that I will say is that I also get sometimes from clients, it just scares clients if I have too many. And when we're thinking about why change orders should be used, really the benefit there is that you are keeping clients calm and informed. You're keeping everybody in the loop on what's going on. Not only that, are you keeping people in the loop, eliminating communication gaps. You're making smarter decisions over time. You can go back and kind of see when are change orders typically being used? What can I prepare for? You're protecting your bottom line. A good chunk of jobs do go to litigation, unfortunately, in the construction industry. It is just a reality of the industry itself. So by actually documenting those change orders, regardless of if you're using that handshake fallacy or whatever kind of thought process you're using and not documenting those things, realistically, you're increasing your risk of mistakes, having to rework things because things were not properly communicated. You're risking legal risk. You're risking your profit if you have to go back and change something and it's not documented. That's probably going to come back on you. So it's just a really good idea to go ahead and use those change orders, like Holly said, whenever we are thinking about creating any sort of change to the contract at all, period.
Okay, so we know why we should use them. We know when we should use them. Carly, I know that you spend a good portion of your weeks helping users get started using Construction Online or learn more about how to use the tools in their Construction Online accounts. So why don't we jump into, can you just walk us through, oops, let's get rid of that. Can you just walk us through, maybe how to create a change order? I know you mentioned that it was, quick, it's easy. So let's take a look at what that process looks like. Just to orient everyone here, what we've done on my screen, we have logged into Construction Online. I have jumped into one of my projects and I've headed to the change orders feature, which here is under financials. And then from here, I know it's a pretty smooth process for creating those change orders.
Yeah, absolutely. So all you have to do really is you're just going to hit add new change order. And I'm really glad that you bring up how easy it is because it is genuinely one of the easiest things you can do in Construction Online is to document those changes. So when we're looking at this screen here, we are on our new change order screen. There is a lot of detail. Really, the only required field here is the change order name. So you can go in, put that information in, but every other field here is designed to help you categorize those change orders, come back and run reports on them later, and improve your internal and external communication for that change order. So you can put in things like subtitles and descriptions where you really break out the details. You can include things like the trade, type, and change reason. Now you'll notice that just like in Construction Online anywhere else, you have that gear icon. Those are customizable drop downs. So if you're seeing stuff in our account that maybe does not apply to you, no worries. You can customize that to however your business categorizes them. You can also go in and adjust the color coding so that when you are going back later and trying to filter or sort by any of these change types, you are able to do so. Now, one thing I do really want to point out here, Holly, is down where you are clicking is actually the submitted date, approval due date. These are going to be really valuable tools for you to use because this is going to document when you have made that change order available to the client, when you have submitted it to them. You are also able to establish due dates for those change orders. Coming back to when you should create them and why you should create them, that is going to protect you. If you have a due date and you're just trusting your client to approve it eventually, and you don't have some sort of form of protection in there for when they need to do that, that means prices can increase by that time. It may mean that the added work days is going to change. And so we're going to want to go ahead and address that and update it so we can actually keep track of that in our contract and make sure, hey, just so you know, if you do not approve this by that established due date, you're going to be able to actually provide the client and say, hey, no, actually, we need to redo that change order. It has been too long. Material prices have adjusted or whatever.
Next step here, what we'll see is a couple of options on building out that price. Again, can you talk us through this or maybe tell us a little bit about what you see happening most often?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we're looking at the pricing for Construction Online, you have lump sum change orders or detailed change orders. This is going to kind of be up to you guys on how you want to use it. Now, lump sum change orders are going to be used if you do not need a detailed breakdown for the change order. Detailed change order is going to be more for if you need to itemize costs or methods. Real world examples of when I see this, lump sum is often like, hey, I went ahead and put a bid in for this change order. It is going to be all subcontractor work, and my subcontractor told me to add a garden tub and remove the old one. It's going to be $15,000. Detailed comes into play when I start to see like my commercial builders or my residential builders doing larger scale change orders that are not super simple like that. For example, a common one might be deck. So if I'm building a deck for someone, that brings up all sorts of new kind of opens a can of worms, Holly, because you have to think about like the structural integrity of the deck. You're going to need to make sure you get plans drawn for the deck. You're going to need to get the materials and the labor, all of those things all together in like priced out. So those where you might
Sure.
be the individual line items. An important thing to note here, Holly, is you can actually pull in cost book items for your change orders. So if you want to, you can just start typing just like you just showed
Oh,
and actually pull in those cost book items directly.
very nice and convenient. So I guess if I've got those set up in my cost books, I can pull them in. I see that it starts to fill in things like a description or perhaps, unit cost for me here. Or I can just type in, okay, fire rated door, add in the cost, and continue to fill in that information. Now, is there a limit as to how many line items I can have?
No, so this is almost because a change order is an addendum to the estimate. You can almost think about it in almost like a mini estimate in itself. You're getting everything you need. You can add classifications here on the left, whether something is labor or material, subcontractor, equipment, other. You can actually go in and do things like add your unity and your quantity, your tax type, any markup, anything like that that is needed on those sections, you are actually able to go ahead and add through a detailed change order.
Perfect. Now I see on the next step here, it says link to estimate. So that's pretty self-explanatory, but tell us a little bit about best practices here. Is this linking back to my original budget or estimate that I've put in already? So that's what that sounds like.
Yeah, exactly, Holly. So when we're thinking about linking to the estimate, this is a really high leverage step that I sometimes see people miss or not realize that is available to them. So basically, when we're looking at a change order, we are actually able to go and link that change order to a specific line item in our estimate, or excuse me, subcategory in our estimate. So if we're clicking on this and we're going to fire rated door, we can go to doors and windows and we can link that to exterior doors if we need to. The benefit is that when you go into your estimate in Construction Online, there is a change order cost column that is actually going to show the price of that change order if you link it back to that subcategory. So we can link our individual change order items to the estimate subcategory, see those pricings in there, and What we can do from there is we can actually go back and organize those. We can get better job costing, and we can start to see all of that information directly within the change or the estimate itself for that change order.
Gotcha. Now, then, next step here is assigned resources. So this is if we wanted to assign like a subcontractor or vendor or someone like that to the change order, tying that back, we would do that on this step. Is that correct?
Yeah, and another thing here is that you can actually set up in your client link and team link permissions where change or client link or team link can only see the change orders assigned to them. So that's another spot where you might use this assigned resource if you
Gotcha.
want to limit who can see the change order on their end.
Perfect. And then attachments, again, pretty self-explanatory. We won't spend a ton of time here, but if there's any attachments that need to be like perhaps a bid or pricing or initial request or something like that, it could all be tied back here. And then I want to talk a little bit about status because I know here this has an impact directly on, from the client perspective. So tell me about status and what that means in
Yes.
Construction Online.
Yeah, so in Construction Online, the status is going to be the draft. So status draft, that basically means that no one in Construction Online, like in terms of client link, is going to be able to see that. This is really great when you're first starting to build out your client link change orders. You don't want to make it visible to them yet, but maybe you want to go ahead and get it in the system and make some edits later. That's when you set the status to draft. Now, pending approval is when you're going to actually make that visible to your team link and client link contacts, and they're going to actually be able to go into Construction Online and approve it. So if you're concerned about whether or not your client's going to be able to see something and you're not ready for that, you can go ahead and say, great, I want to go ahead and update my change order status to pending approval or draft depending on what you want them to see.
Great. And then we'll just save that and it
Yep.
gets logged in the system. So the next thing we want to talk about, and again, creating the change order generally, you can add as much or as little detail as you want. So, for you, you might say, okay, I want to put in the name and detail out my pricing. And maybe you're more concerned about tracking change reasons, but not some of the other stuff. That's okay. We want to make sure that you're aware of all the things that you can do, in particular on projects where we see people all the time end up with, you know, 100, 200, sometimes even 400 change orders on a job. And so having those additional classifications can actually be really valuable. The next thing we want to talk about, though, is what does the approval process look like, in particular from the client perspective? So one thing that'll happen is if you have your client link members assigned on the job, when those change orders get created and saved, the client is going to receive a notification or an email letting them know that a new change order is ready for their approval. Now, as Carly mentioned, if you don't want that to happen, you can put the change order in draft mode so they're not getting that notification just
Right.
yet while you're still working on it. But generally, like once you release it, the client is going to receive an email. They'll be able to click on it and log into their portal. So we wanted to just show a quick view of, what that looks like from the client side and what that approval process looks like. Now, one of the things that you can do inside Construction Online is actually head over to your team area. So I'll do that here. And you can go ahead and preview the portal as that particular client. So if I go in as this client here, I can preview and have a chance. So, like we can show you on this webinar, but if you're curious, like, hey, what does that actually look like inside my client link accounts? You'll be able to go ahead and see that kind of within any of your projects. You can choose to preview that portal. And then I'm going to just jump over into change orders. So what the client is seeing is, hey, in this case, there are 2 change orders that need their approval. When they select one of those, they will have an option to go ahead and either hit approve or reject. If they choose to approve it, it's going to prompt them for a signature. If they choose to reject it, it will ask them if they want to send you a note back with that rejection. Now, one thing I just want to point out super quick is because we are in preview mode here, I am not the actual client, so it's not going to allow me here to go ahead and approve the change order from here. So there are safeties, built in, so it doesn't allow you to approve it from the actual client portal. The client is going to have to do that. But if you need to approve it on behalf of the client, you have that option just within your main change order section. So you don't need to go into the client portal to do that. You can go ahead and approve it, just from here. And you'll see you've got now the thumbs up and thumbs down. And if I mark it as approved, it will log as that Holly approved it on behalf of the client.
Yeah, Holly, and one thing that I want to point out here too as well is that if you have set that approval due date that we were talking about, when your client actually goes in and they attempt to approve something that is after the approval due date, they actually will be unable to. They're going to get a note in their approval section that basically says, hey, the due date on this change order has passed. We're going to need you to go ahead and send a message to your builder to basically say, hey, what you want to approve. But for safety purposes, because that approval due date has changed, we don't know if that pricing and material is still accurate. Your builder's going to need to get back in touch with you about that because that approval due date has passed.
Right. And one other common question that we hear about the approval process is, will I know when the client does this? And the answer is yes. When the client marks the change order as approved, you and your team are going to get a notification so that you are aware of what's happening in real time there.
And building off of that, Holly, as well, when we're thinking about that, if you're concerned that your client is just not going to pay attention after the initial change order, you can also set up change order reminders to send those out after the change order, like the initial, hey, you have a change order pending. So if your client is maybe like less likely the type to go into Construction Online and be
Hmm.
continually checking their portals, you can set up those reminders for them and for yourself as well.
Perfect. Now, at this point, we have created a change order. The client has approved it. Let's talk a little bit about what then comes next, especially as we start to look at managing change orders. So, common things that you may do with your change orders in Construction Online sometimes relate to other features as well within the platform. So, you might at this point want to send the change order to QuickBooks if you're using the integration. Once a change order is approved, you can also use it to create invoices within the invoicing tool. You can create purchase orders. Carly already mentioned how it does connect back to the estimate. So it does then begin to connect into other tools that you may be using in Construction Online. Um,
Including our new payment application feature.
that's right. Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. So it pulls right into there, all sorts of, dashboards and reports. We won't go over all of those in this particular session since we are focusing on change orders. But one thing I did want to call out that you can do within the change order itself, from a management perspective, is manage the order and delivery dates. So one thing that will happen is, the change order is approved. Now we have to kind of track the next few steps of that process, especially when we were talking about, things that require material orders, and we see this a lot. There is a need to document and track, like, okay, we've got the change order approved. Now, did we order the necessary materials for the change order? So you can confirm that the items have been ordered. And then you can also confirm what date you place the order. So let's say we ordered today. We have an expected shipping date of this Friday. We can go ahead and plug that information in, and save that. When you actually receive those, you can come back and mark that those items were delivered and document the date you actually received them. So you'll notice when I did that, my label here updated so that I can see quickly at a glance as I'm looking at my change orders, which ones have been ordered, which ones have in fact been delivered. We're able to track that information, very effectively here.
Now, Holly, I do have to call out the elephant in the room. So, for anybody who's been with Construction Online before, so anyone who's kind of used to it, this is probably going to look a little different to you. You're going to start to notice some new views and things like that that we have actually released lately. So, Holly, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of the idea behind these new views and why we've kind of gone in and implemented them?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a new update, and definitely provides, I think, more especially more power on the change order management side. Creating the change orders is still, a pretty straightforward process, but these new views do give you a lot more that you can do with that information, with those change orders as they are created. I am going to just kind of point out what those new views are and walk you through them. And then I think one of the most exciting things kind of comes not just at the project level, but the company level. So right now we are inside a particular project in that change orders area, of course. And you'll notice that here I have these four new icons. What change orders essentially have gotten as part of their update is our new dynamic table system. So this just gives you a new table view for change orders that you are able to really customize to how you work day to day. So all of your, which columns are visible, what order they're in, those are things that you can, customize for each individual user. Carly, the color coding on things like the types or trades or reasons, that's going to show in the table now, whereas previously that was not visible. And then you also have the group by view, which just allows you to take this table and then group it by any of these columns, really just by dragging it up. So if I wanted to group mine by approval status, I can just pull that right up into this group by area. And then now I have a group of approved change orders, a group of pending ones. You can see that it's smart. If I had some that had been rejected, it would create a group for that as well. And then I know one of the things, Carly, that you were really excited about was the new card view as well.
Yeah, Holly, and one thing that I want to point out here really quick is we spent a lot of time at the beginning of this webinar kind of going over the different fields and tools that you can use in change orders. So thinking about things like type, reason, subtitle, description, assigned resources. We spent a lot of time on that creation portion. And this is one of the reasons why, because when we are looking at our actual change orders, once you start to get more than just a few in there, more than three or more than four, you are actually going to be able to go in and filter by these things. So if we're looking at this board view right here, we can actually choose how we want to organize the columns based on the things in that change order details section. So if we're concerned about like, hey, I want to see the change orders by the change reason, which ones are coming from client request, which one are coming from design development, which one are going to come from pre-existing conditions, we're actually going to be able to do that. So those board views are going to be really valuable. So the sooner, one thing that I do sometimes see people fall in the pitfall for is they're just going to say, oh, I'm going to throw in just the name. And that's why Holly and I wanted to spend so much time at the beginning going over the different options for how you can customize those change orders and categorize them, because you're going to be able to filter through here. You're going to be able to go through and hide empty column views. You're going to be able to organize those by the different types, the trades, the change reasons. And that's going to really break down what all's included. Now, also on this board view, you're going to be able to kind of control how these are going to appear. You're going to be able to control the column width, how dense the card is. If you hover over some, you're going to be able to see whether or not they were signed or if they were approved by you internally. So you're going to get a lot of really good value out of that section. So just something to bring up there. Now, the card view, that was what we were on before, Holly. And as you can see here, you're going to get some really great, just quick visual impact. What's being approved, what hasn't been, my highlights, my logs. The change order, this view is something that's actually been pretty heavily requested for change orders. And I'm really glad that we were able to actually go ahead and implement that.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, one of the things that I think is a huge value add for this, and for anyone that's been using our change order system for a while, one of the things that this provides is a higher level view at the company level. So, in this case, we have been, really spending our time within an individual project, managing the change orders on individual jobs, sort of one at a time, within. But with the new views, and we'll go ahead and just pull up the company overview here. I think one of the most exciting things is that now that those same information is available across all of your projects. So I've just switched now to my company level here, gone into the change orders feature. And so now at this point, I can actually see in all of these different kind of tools, like I can see all of the change orders across multiple projects in one in one table. And
in
really,
one view.
previously, the only way to get this was by exporting them or doing some sort of report. We really wanted to bring that flexibility to something that you could use kind of within your account more dynamically in real time. So as we just click through and we'll take a look, I've got mine, grouped here by approval status, but I could, maybe group that by project. Or if I jump into my board view here, I can set it so that I have, a column for each project and can kind of see at a glance, um, how many change orders I have or what their status is. So the possibilities are nearly endless when it comes to how you can use these new views to organize change orders, because I think that's the other part that we really want to emphasize here, especially if you're just starting to use change orders in Construction Online, or you feel like you want to maybe expand your usage, is there is the part of the change order, and this is super important, of just getting that information documented and protecting the business for all those reasons we went over earlier. But change orders are also, when done well in a system like Construction Online, they also start to serve as a communication tool for your team. They serve as information you can use to make decisions in the future. So you want everybody, kind of on your team to be able to come in and see at a glance what's going on. What do we have in outstanding change orders? What needs attention? Do we have some that are outstanding, maybe that the client hasn't come back to us on? And you're able to see that information just that much more quickly when you can, not only
Bird's eye view.
get that bird's eye view. Yeah. And like, of course, there's management to be done at that individual project level, and that's where a lot of that day to day will live. But when you are looking at a portfolio of, 5 projects or 10 projects or 50 projects, views like this really help, your team to be able to see what's happening across the company, in addition to across individual jobs.
And Holly, you actually told me something when I was first starting out in success, and I don't know if you're going to remember this conversation. But you actually told me once when we were talking about Construction Online, you were kind of talking to me about different ways to approach things with clients. And you said one thing to keep an eye out for is that it's not always just about getting information into the system. It's about what the client can do with that information. And that's one of the reasons, we have put a lot of effort into making new dashboards, new views. We want to make sure that you're not just having to export everything. This is the digital age, it's the information age, and we know that it's really important for you to be able to go and see everything super clearly first time. So that's one of the biggest reasons for this is it's not just about the data putting it into the system, it's about how you can visualize it once it's in the system to get real feedback. And that comes back to one of the first points that we made in this webinar when we were talking about the why of change orders, is it helps you make more informed decisions for the future. If your change orders are continuously getting rejected or you're constantly having to make revisions to them, that's a place of improvement where you can really go and get a return on investment. So you know in the future that you're not wasting time making change orders that aren't working. You're not going back and trying to hunt down change orders. When you finish a job, you can go back quickly, get great insight. Do I need better surveys? Do I need to double check with the client on their client selections so that they're not making a ton of owner requests or changes? Do I need to make sure that all my plans are maybe a little closer to code because I'm having a lot of code violations that need to be corrected? Those types of things not only just allow you to get approvals through the system, which is what a change order is for, but it allows you to build your business better and actually improve the quality of work that you're providing your clients.
Exactly. You get that insight. Okay, so we've talked about these new views. Super excited for all of you to get to try those off. I do want to mention that if you are a current user, you can expect to see this in your account tomorrow. So if you go in today, you will not see these new views just yet. But if you go in, check it out tomorrow, these will all be available to you. We did want to wrap up just with a couple of other things, that we see people needing with change orders and doing with change orders. And of course, one of those is reporting. So,
Mhm.
of course, you have all of these great tools on screen, but we know that like there will be a need to like print these up as well as generate reports. Carly, talk to me a little bit about the options that are available for folks from a reporting standpoint.
Yeah, Holly, so I'm glad that you bring it up. So, as I just mentioned, we have really prioritized, getting these financial reports together, getting different dashboards together for you in Construction Online if you've been watching our previous webinar and some of our new sales dashboards or things like that. However, it's also important to be able to export that data. Not everyone's going to feel super technologically savvy. Sometimes you're going to have subcontractors that maybe you don't feel comfortable giving the portal to them. You can still run different reports. You're going to be able to run really beautiful change order proposals and change order contracts. Those change order contracts are going to include fixed fee language and cost plus, so you can actually do it for included cost and time materials, or a cost plus contract depending on what you're doing. You're going to be able to go ahead and do things like change order overview, creating a rundown of how change orders will affect the project's contract price, total duration. You're going to be able to run summaries by status, summaries by type, by reason. Again, one of the reasons Holly and I focus so much on creation at the beginning. But you're also going to be able to do things like run subcontractor agreements and purchase orders from those change orders as well. So you get a lot of really high value reporting that you can go through, run for your clients, collect physical signatures on, or one thing that my clients often do, Holly, is they will have some sort of physical file for the job just where they keep everything when they
Sure.
archive it. That's a great thing to do at the end of a job, just to put it in like potentially like a litigation folder. Before you know, you've run off and you archive it and kind of put it out of sight, out of mind.
Just get all that data out.
Yes.
One thing too that I wanted to um, talk a little bit about, and you may have noticed this in our account earlier, are some of the more advanced settings for change orders. So of course, it's pretty fast and easy to make change orders. However, we have tried to make that even faster by allowing you to set some defaults. So if I just jump into my menu here in the top right, we'll go ahead and select our change order markup settings. And this just allows you to do some things like first set a default markup percentage. So if you want your change orders to always have, a markup of 20%, this will just auto apply that to any of those line items so that you don't have to remember to do it. Now, the system will catch it. Like if you don't put a markup in, you'll be prompted. So it'll remind you about that, but this just takes away one step. You can also apply that setting on more of a classification basis. So if you are doing detailed line items on your change orders, some of those may be labor items, material items, etc. You would be able to set different markups for those different classifications. And then you also have an option to include a per change order fee. And this is just an additional line item that would get added to any change order that you create in Construction Online. So we have seen people just include like a change order processing fee or an administrative fee that they want to add to all of their change orders. The amounts of those I have seen vary. Sometimes it's just a couple of $100s. I've seen people go as high as a couple of $1,000s, especially people that are really wanting to discourage change order requests from their clients. There's not necessarily a right or wrong way to do it because it is going to be specific to the type of business that you have and what your goals are. But it is a great way for you to just safeguard the business. First of all, it does take administrative time and energy to manage change orders. So it's a reasonable thing. A lot of people just build this into their contracts. And so this setting allows you to just make sure that that amount actually gets added on and that someone's not having to remember to do it every time. Same thing with markups.
Yeah, Holly. And one thing that I just want to point out here as well is, like you said, it does take administrative burden, but you're also really providing an amenity here. It is a great boon to the client that they can go in and just sign through Construction Online directly. They're not having to go in and wait on a contract, print it, sign it, notarize it, send it back. Like, you're really providing a great service by allowing them to go into their portal and just do an e-signature. It takes the pressure off them. I mean, building a home or a business or doing any sort of construction project is really stressful for the owner. So that's just one of those ways that you're providing additional benefits to them by using the system.
Sure. Well, I think that is such a great point. I know, Carla, you had a couple of other best practices as we wrap up that you wanted to share. And I do see we've had a couple of questions, so we'll grab those in a moment. But before we get to any questions and really wrap up today, like what would your final thoughts on some of the best practices or maybe additional tips for change orders? What would that be?
Yeah, so kind of the first thing, so I've worked with a lot of clients. As a success coordinator, I go ahead and I actually help people when they're first getting started with Construction Online and ensuring long term that they feel successful with the system and they're getting good value from it. A couple things that I've just noted in my time of getting people started with change orders. The first thing is that when you are first getting started with change orders, it is a great idea to just sit down with your team, anyone who's going to be touching change orders, and just go over your current workflow. Whatever it is, go ahead, talk it about. Sometimes what you see is if you're not already using a change order system or you are using like you're used to like spreadsheets or something, sometimes you can overcomplicate it. Trying to accommodate for human error, you start going through various safeguards, 5, 10 safeguards of steps that a change order has to go through. When we talk about Construction Online making it simple, it is as simple as creating the change order. You can put it in draft mode, get any approvals necessary, release to client, collect signature, track delivery and order date. That's it. So think about your current workflow. Think about what areas of redundancy you have that you can eliminate using the change order feature.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Carly. I think one tip that I would add in here, and it's a practical one within the system, is that change orders are compatible with our communication, with our comments tool for
Right.
communication. So I think that's a tip that I would generally offer to folks as well, is like as you're putting change orders in, maybe you're implementing some of the ideas from today, using draft mode, or maybe you are kind of starting to do a little bit more classification. Sometimes when there's collaboration needed, the comments can really come in helpful. And so um, that's just going to be located on this last tab here on your change order details. You are able to write comments on change orders, or any of your team members can, and you can actually control whether or not clients and subs can see those comments as well. So if I wanted to include the client here in a comment, I could just type it in, post it. Everyone is getting notified in real time. Your clients can actually do the same thing in their portal. So if they go to look at a change order and maybe are have a question perhaps before they approve it, and want to just submit that, they have a place to do that right on the change order. So I would say encourage your team and your clients, and even yourself, of course, to use that commenting feature, because it really does facilitate better communication with the change orders, which is really the goal.
Yeah, a couple of just other little points and best practices. Making sure that you're starting with drafts like when you're collaborating internally. That's a great way to prevent accidental information from getting shared or like miscalculations or things like that. Linking the change orders to the estimate like we discussed, so it's easily viewable when you're doing your job costing. And finally, making sure that you're reviewing that change order summary on every project at a regular cadence. That change order summary is not only going to break down what has been rejected, what has been pending, and what has been like confirmed or approved. It is also going to tell you like what is our overall added workday? What are we expecting the price difference to be from our client just in terms of change orders? So those change order summaries are going to provide you really valuable information long term. So reviewing those as a regular cadence and making sure you're familiar with where each of your jobs at is really going to save you in terms of, oh, did I submit that? Or, oh, have I heard back about this yet?
Yeah, I think those are great tips. So we did have a couple of questions. We'll get to those before we wrap up. One person wants to know about kind of adding additional formatting for like bulleting. So things that you would see, like I guess some of the like the bullets, the bold, and you can see here that like within the description for the change order, those are now available. So you do have the option to, like, if I wanted to create, say, like a bullet list here, I could go ahead and do that, or a numbered list perhaps. Item one, item two. So there are some additional formatting. I would certainly encourage any, existing users, if there are additional things that you want to be able to format differently, certainly like submit that feedback to us. We always love to hear it. But we did, kind of add some of that with these updates to change orders. And that also gives me just like a quick chance to talk about future updates or plans as well. So of course, this update to change orders is a big visual change with those new views and new view as far as like the change order details, what we're seeing with the timeline and the blade here on the right hand side, as well as your board view and your table views. There will be some additional updates, as always, coming for change orders. So like stay tuned. There's always more, probably not like a single giant update, but more small updates. We are always reviewing feature requests and things like that from clients as well. Well, I think, Carly, that wraps us up for today. I know, how would you want to close or any final thoughts here? I think the big thing for me is just, like again, reminder to any of our current users that you will see these changes within your account tomorrow. So if you have questions about that, I know Carly, you and your team are available and look forward to hearing from and helping people out.
Yeah, and that's just what I was about to say. You are welcome to reach out to us. We are also going to have some new documentation available for some of the new views and things like that that is going to be available through our knowledge base. And if you we are also have a PDF, is that correct, Holly, on the
Yeah.
change order changes?
That's right. So lots of great resources for people in terms of just getting to know the new views and options available to them.
Yeah, well, if you guys have any questions, you know my email. I'm more than happy to help. You're welcome to chat in with any of our team or call our office. We're open 8 to 5:30 Central Standard Time and Monday through Friday. We'll be happy to answer any questions you have about change orders. We have the knowledge base if it happens to be outside of those hours, but we just really want to take the time to thank everyone for joining us on the webinar today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Until next time. Take care.